show two. We are back. Tape delayed show number two, and this is going to be a shorter week. I know everyone in the comments, why aren't you talking about that? It's tape delayed. It's not real time. This was taped in the beginning of September, actually before the NFL
Giving
season
away the
started.
secrets. I was gonna do a whole wardrobe change. I was gonna put earrings on. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
we tried to 42 fake you, but we were too lazy. One of the most interesting fights I think of the month, going under the radar, a lot of bad blood. Mikaela Mayer, Sandy Ryan. What are your thoughts in the build up to this fight? Because Mikaela's got an interesting career. She probably didn't lose her two fights that she lost in, but now she occupies a fight as a very talented fighter, very marketable fighter who has two losses that were razor close and highly disputed, but she didn't get the benefit of it. Alycia Baumgardner went on to superstar status off of the win over Mikaela Mayer, and Tasha Jonas is doing what she's doing in Britain. Now she's facing another figure in Sandy Ryan, and there's an element of a dynamic, a gym rivalry, division amongst teams. People that used to be with Mikaela Mayer are no longer training her, and now Sandy Ryan's training at a different gym, no longer in Vegas, no longer at DLX Boxing. She's at Matchroom Boxing in Santa Monica. Mayer's got a new co-trainer, former fighter, forget his name, and with Al Mitchell, etc. For me, this is going to be about the emotion of the fight. And I'm not saying that as a sexist term because they're women. I think there's a lot of bad blood and animosity based on the relationships of people involved that will carry into this fight. Dakota, what do you think when you handicap this fight?
I think that in general, when I've seen Sandy Ryan, there's some limitations in terms of the fluidity, and I think that Mikaela does some of that a little better. I think she just has a little bit more of a well-rounded game, but you have to consider the size, the physicality of Sandy Ryan. I think the fact that she keeps getting better, we don't know if we've seen the best of her. Maybe this is the fight that, she really maximizes what she can do. I think I lean towards Mikaela though, just off of the experience and the larger sort of broader skill set and arguably being an undefeated fighter.
So to me, this fight's about identity. It's about what is Michaela's identity in the ring. I don't like it when she is a push you forward fighter. I don't like it when she crowds her distance. She's got this big long frame. I love when she fights like Inspector Gadget. She tends to get hit a little clean when she's in those mid ranges, and it seems like she weaponizes toughness at times, and then that leads to her punch volume. She doesn't have the feints or the swag. Do you know what I mean? Where you catch rhythm. Seems like at times she's just really tough, and it honestly it's kind of hard to watch because it feels like she's so tough. I don't want to use the word good person to quantify a skill in boxing, but I do think there's an element of being a good person, a tough person, a stand-up individual where you can kind of eat a shot. Certain people can. Do you get what I'm saying, Dakota? Where like if you're gonna fight back because someone did you wrong, there's a level of toughness that can't be taught. It's kind of a character. I think Michaela's got that. My concern in this is Sandy is kind of, and I'm big on both of these fighters. Sandy's kind of built. If you stand in front of her, she's a 1-2 punch fighter, and she loads up, and she's the naturally bigger fighter. So my concern in this fight is Michaela's going to have to fight as the smaller fighter, more strategic fighter, because I don't think it's advantageous to try to dog out Sandy Ryan.
Yeah, and it's when she fought Natasha Jonas, they're both fighters moving up from 126, 130 up to a higher weight. So it's they started in the same place. I think Sandy's been at higher weights her whole career. So I think that like you said, Mikaela was I think unnecessarily physical at times in the Jonas fight where she could have separated a little better. Maybe that's an effort to try to win decisions and to be the aggressor and to to make the fight, to initiate the action. But I think when she stays on the end of her punches and she's a little bit more thoughtful, is when she's at her best. And I think that IQ is going to be her biggest attribute because, like you said, I think there's a lot of physical advantages for Sandy.
And I don't see how she lost that Jonas fight. Like for anyone saying that she lost that fight, like I honestly don't see how you could score that fight against Mayer. It's a very bad decision. It could be the worst decision, although I'm sure there's other bad decisions that have happened. Um, I don't
And to
understand
be
how
honest,
she.
man, I thought the Baumgartner decision was not good. The only lesson I think from that was that, she took a little bit to get going in that fight. She didn't really get going until the fourth. And in these women's fights that are 10 rounds and they're 2-minute rounds, that's a tough hole to dig yourself out of.
Yeah, it's a sprint. You got to kind of come out quick. Um, I get worried that the story, the coaching, uh, Coach Flick had been working with Mikaela Mayer. Mikaela Mayer is no longer working with Coach K, who now is, I don't even know if he works with Sandy Ryan, but there was a conflict of interest in Mayer's opinion because he was working with Sandy and Mikaela, and Mikaela wanted to fight Sandy. I just, I think the X factor for me is, does any of those personal relationships and the feeling of people not being by your side who had been with you, does that come into the fight?
I mean, how can it not ultimately?
Now, let me ask back, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Is that a sustainable energy source, or is that something that's going to limit you to execute a game plan?
It's all about how you use it. It's all about how you use it. We were talking about that with Caleb and Trevor. How do you use that fire? Do you use it to really I need to go out and beat this guy up, or is it like I'm gonna go out and make you look stupid?
But that's the X factor to this fight. I
For
feel
sure.
like that's the story of the fight is, it's, we know what Sandy's going to do. She's a big girl, no insult. She's like a CrossFit girl, right? She's strong, and but she's going to come, and I've always seen her as an elite level talent, but the way I've seen her as an elite talent is she picks her spots, digs her feet into the sand and punches. And we know what she's going to do. And even if she feels emotion in the fight, her identity has been forged in the ring. For Mikaela, she's shown so many different elements at different times. I'm curious to see, with a new coaching staff and with this situation, how does she choose to dictate the pace in this fight?
It's going to be crucial. Ultimately, the fights as a whole is going to be dictated by what kind of style Michaela approaches it with.
On the undercard, we got Xander Zayas versus Damian the Samurai Sosa. Sosa recently defeated Marquez Valle on our good friends Pro Box TV. Zayas, last time out, fought Patrick Teixeira. It was an all right performance, but I think that he underperformed, if we're being honest. I think the expectation was for him to kind of dominate Teixeira, and the fight turned into kind of a sparring session that Teixeira got going in late. So what do you see in this fight? And do you think that there's anything to read into Xander goes from a headliner to a co-feature?
There's some things to read into on that front for sure. As far as how quickly they're moving him, but I do like that Xander's just taking on like a tough guy who's coming off some good wins, and staying active. There's nothing wrong with that, especially for the age. He's still a young guy. He's still 21 years old, I think. So there's nothing wrong with just taking a tough fight.
Your guy, Bruce Shoo Shoo Carrington, he's taken on Sulaiman Segawa. Just recently beat Ruben Villa, high volume guy,
Mm-mm.
tough. This is not a cakewalk, and if Bruce makes it look like a cakewalk, he's ready for a belt, in my opinion.
That would be a real statement in light of what Segawa just did, man. He really earned it against Ruben Villa, and he's another guy with a couple losses, but a guy who's consistently like Josh Warrington. He's fought compelling, tough matchups, and has clearly learned from some of them, and has that winning mentality. So if Shushu wins this and wins this in impressive, dominant fashion, I think that really puts him in the conversation about elite guys. Even if he just has a tough win, I think it puts him into a different kind of conversation. This is not an easy one at all.
How do you see it playing out?
I think that Bruce is a really talented guy, and I think that he's a really hungry guy, and I think he's just going to have one more level than Segawa. But it's not an easy one to call, man. And you know, we've seen Bruce be so dominant and so powerful in his last couple of fights, and you know, if he's able to replicate that here, like we said, he's a guy.
Vito Mielnicki, who wants to fight Xander, will be on the undercard. They're fighting at the same time, which tells us they might be on course to fight in 2025. Rohan Polanco on the undercard. Tiger Johnson, yet again, stop me if you heard this before. He's in another hard fight. Elvis Rodriguez taking on veteran Kendo Castaneda. Floyd Diaz and Ollie Feliz on the undercard. Definitely worth tuning into. And the Ollie Feliz fight is actually a real fight. Rashad Coulter, a lot of people don't know, but that's Ollie Feliz has a little bit of some defensive flaws, and that's a guy that I'm not saying he's going to beat him, but you might look back and go, man, he's getting hit a little more than I felt comfortable, or he'll exceed. One last fight before we get out of here and give the people what they want to hear, and that's Alycia Baumgardner, Delfine Persoon. It is happening in Fayetteville, Georgia. I, for the life of me, don't know how you watch this fight, but it is happening. Uh, any thoughts that Delfine Persoon, one of our, I guess, gals, we can't call her a guy, one of our gals, deep Lukie and Dakota fighter that we appreciate for how tough. Any chance she beats Bumgardner coming off a lengthy suspension?
I think there's definitely a chance. I haven't seen her fight since the Katie Taylor fight, so I don't know how the punishment of those two fights is worn on her. I always felt like it definitely left something with Katie or took something out of Katie. And it's possible that it took something out of her too. But you know, that's a tough fight. That's a tough matchup. It feels like Alycia is going to have a tough time with that level of activity, but she's also very deliberate and kind of slow. So if, you know, Alycia is at a certain skill level, she'll be able to outbox her. But, you know, there's been lapses of activity in certain rounds that I feel like Pursoon is really gonna not give her the air to think and to reset.
So, what do you think this sets the stage for? Is this setting the stage for Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano? Who stylistically would you say Delphine Persoon replicates? Because when I see Raymond Muratalla,
Replicates Antonio Margarito.
but I'm saying in the female division, because what I was going to say is when I see Muratalla fight Tevin Farmer, you see a comparison to Shakur Stevenson's style. So I'm wondering, like, who out there to take such a hard fight? Who do you think Bumgardner is looking down the future to try to get in there with?
I'm not sure, and I think this is too tough of a fight to be thinking in those terms. Honestly, I think she's better off making sure she wins this one because it's not a gimme.
Yeah, I think not unlike many other fighters, she's turned into a celebrity overnight, and we haven't seen that many performances since her stardom. I think she's only had two performances and then had an extended period of absence after a failure, an ambiguous failure that's kept her out. Now she's no longer on DAZN. It looks like she's being self-promoted via like her management team. Interesting to see how this chapter of her career goes.
Also interesting, just in general, to see a fight of that level and magnitude not have a clear and obvious way of being watched.
Fairly certain it's on something called Brinks TV, which I
I don't know what
think
that
for
is.
the time of this recording, if that's true, although I don't think it's on it anymore. I heard it's going to be on possibly a streaming platform that's available on desktop and phone free. You just have to go to their website, but I've received no PR material for this fight, and until I receive that, I don't feel comfortable speaking on it.
Yeah, it could be the first go around on Lara Garcia.
Yeah, I mean that's what it is. Um, Dakota, where can people support you on this second tape delayed week? And what has changed since our last tape delayed week where you told people what's going on for you?
Nothing has changed in the last hour. You can always follow me at the Lukie Boxing Show, ITR Boxing, and my own show, the Slip and Weed Podcast, on YouTube and Instagram.